Good evening and welcome. This is a public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the City of Evanston. The zoning ordinance directs this body to hear applications for major variations, special uses, and appeals from decisions of the zoning administrator. Depending on the type of matter, the board will either make a final determination or send its recommendation to City Council. Melissa, will you call the roll?
Lisa Deacon.
Here.
Scott Gingold.
Here.
Mary Beth Burns.
Here.
Myrna Aravallo.
Here.
Violetta Cullen.
Present.
Kirill Miranchev.
Here.
And Mary McCauley.
Present.
With 7 people here, we have a quorum tonight. Also present tonight are zoning planner Melissa Klotz and planning and zoning administrator Scott Mangum. This is a formal meeting, and there are rules that govern our proceedings. Most importantly, only one person speaks at a time so that all testimony may be accurately recorded. Anyone who wishes to address the board regarding any matter on the agenda will have the opportunity to do so at the appropriate time. Our procedure is to hear from staff on the documents on file and then receive testimony and other evidence from the applicant or appellant. Next, persons who wish to make a statement regarding the matter may do so at that time. Any person with a legal interest in property located within 500 feet of the subject property may present evidence, reasonably question witnesses, or seek a continuance of the hearing. When all supporting and opposing testimony and statements have been heard, the applicant or appellant will be given the opportunity for rebuttal or a closing statement. Then the board will close the record and begin deliberations. All testimony will be under oath. Although we do not apply the strict rules of evidence, please limit your testimony or statement to your personal knowledge. When you address the board, please state your name and address and sign in on the provided sheet. Our meetings are audio and video recorded. Please make sure that you are at a microphone when asking questions or making statements so they can be properly recorded. All proceedings are subject to broadcast at a later date. Any matter not concluded at tonight's hearing will be continued to our next regularly scheduled meeting. There are 2 items on the agenda this evening. Is 1402 Lincoln Street here? And 1015 McDaniel. Great. Everybody's here. So the first thing we will do on our agenda is to review and approve the meeting minutes. Do you want to do 3 motions? Because there were different people at different meetings.
Okay.
Yes. So how about, did everybody have a chance to read all of them from August 1st, August 30th, and October 3rd?
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic. Any changes?
No.
Great.
I move we approve the August 1st minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I will note that those not voting were not present at that meeting, which would be Myrna. Let's move to the August 30th meeting minutes.
I move we approve the August 30th meeting minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The opposed? I will note that all those voting, those not voting were not here at that meeting, which would have been Scott. Okay, on the October 3rd meeting,
I move that we approve the October 3rd minutes.
Second.
so moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Those not voting were not present, which again was Scott. All right, so now we're moving on to new business, which is 1402 Lincoln Street. And before we do that, anybody who's going to speak at tonight's meeting, can you raise your right hand and say, anybody, speak? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings? Yes. Fantastic. All right, Melissa's going to read 1402 Lincoln Street into the record.
Gerald Brennan, property owner, applies for major zoning relief to locate a previously constructed solar house single-family residence in the R1 single-family residential district. The applicant requests a 10-foot front yard setback where 27 feet is required, zoning code section 6828A1. A 26.4-foot rear yard setback where 30 feet is required, zoning code section 6828A4. And 47% impervious surface coverage where 45% is permitted, zoning code section 68210. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include variation to application submitted October 9th, 2017, zoning analysis, plat of survey, site plan, elevation, renderings, image of property, aerial view of property, zoning map of property, and Dapper draft meeting minutes excerpt of October 25th, 2017.
All right, if you'd like to come up and present your case, please.
Thanks, everyone, for your time. My name is Gerald Brennan. I own the property at 1402 Lincoln Street. It's a 95 or 96-year-old house currently that's under deconstruction by the Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse. And my hope is to replace it with the house by Northwestern, the solar house, as Melissa just read. Due to the unique shape of the house, it does, as you see here, exceed the allotment for setback in the front. One item for consideration for the board is that my lot is somewhat unusual in that it's not easily accessible. It's not on a traditional block that one might consider a front yard or a backyard or a side yard. So I just hope you can see the possibility for a variance here. I also, some other possible considerations. The house was a winner at the U.S. Department of Energy Solar Decathlon. We have Professor Dr. Dick Coe here, who was the faculty director for the project. And the plan is to have the house available for educational programming, both for Northwestern students and Evanston School District students. I don't know if that would be considered a factor for your consideration, but it's something that's important to me. I have two neighbors here in support, Tim Barilli at 1405 Lincoln. I held a meeting at my house about 2 months ago with Alderman Revelle, 7th Ward Alderman, and we had about 15 neighbors come to the house, and Professor Coe walked them through the whole project. We had unanimous support of all the neighbors who attended, including my neighbors immediately surrounding my house. They may be coming here. They weren't sure if they could get here or not. But that's Carol Bild and Barb Gary. They live immediately adjacent to my house and are supportive of the project. Trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. Any questions?
Can you walk us through the site plan, specifically sort of the orientation as it relates to, I guess, the park as well as, I guess, is that Wesley? Like that gravel road there is Wesley, right? So even though it has a Lincoln Street address, you're really fronting on Wesley, correct?
Right.
So then where is Wesley on this site plan here? To the right?
Right, to the
Okay.
right, which is to the east of my house. There's one other house on Wesley in Lincoln. It's 1400 Wesley, Barb Gary's house. And Barb's house is actually closer to Wesley than what we're proposing here with the solar house. It would be considered her side yard because her house faces Lincoln. And she has a big front yard coming up to Lincoln.
And did I read then that some portion of the structure is to be removed so that what's going to be built on site is not actually what is shown in the picture here? Is that correct? Melissa, can you pull up the picture so we can see what?
Yeah. The glass structure and the deck, the glass structure has been removed from the drawing that is on here as well that Melissa just scrolled up from. And we removed that in order to comply with the city's code for, I think, both permeable surface and to percentage of structure on the lot. So that, unfortunately, sadly, is not part of the project now.
And did you buy the house that's being deconstructed now? Have you ever resided in the house that's being, okay.
For 10 years, or 11 years, yeah.
It's an interesting lot right there adjacent to the park.
Yeah, it's really great. It's, like I said, an unusual lot in that it doesn't have the traditional neighbor setup for most blocks in the city.
So I have a question. If the house is being deconstructed now, what happens if this doesn't get approved? What's Plan B?
Plan B is to start from scratch and hire an architect to draw a house that would conform to the city code.
Okay.
And do you own this Northwestern designed home? Is that still on Northwestern's campus at this point, and it would be sort of brought over in modular units kind of
It's
thing?
currently in a warehouse, and I don't officially own it yet. Northwestern and I are still finalizing the process.
I have a question about the plan. Is there somebody who can actually answer that question? So the concern I have is there are 4 steps to get up at the front of the house, and there's only 1 step into the rear entry. So either the grade must pitch up, or you guys are going to end up making some changes in the back. What's the plan there?
That's a great question. I didn't realize there were just 1 step in the back. Do you mean behind?
From the garage. So when you
okay.
from the south side, when you go in that side entryway, there's 1 step up into that entryway, and then the entryway is the same level as the living space.
Yes.
But if you now go out the open deck and down the front, there's now 4 steps to get out.
Oh, yes.
So you can't go up 1 and up 4 and be on the same level unless grade pitches.
No, the grade isn't going to pitch radically, just enough for drainage.
So do you think that change in grade is going to happen inside the house or out? That change in levels is going to happen inside the house or outside the house?
I have to double check with the architect, to be honest. That's a great observation, because I hadn't connected the dots that there is just 1 step and then 4 steps down from the deck.
Because my concern is, right, if you move those steps to the outside, we're now talking about more impervious surface coverage, right? Because now you have a landing and more steps and that whole deal. There seems to be space on the inside where you could take care of that. Can you agree to take care of that on the inside so that we're not changing or increasing any of the things that you're applying for tonight?
Sure. Yeah, I would agree to that.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll make a note to, if there's for some reason any lack of clarity with this drawing, I'll have the architect clarify. Perhaps the architect already planned for an inside the house increase.
There's a logical spot for it. So it seems like those lines might just be missing, but it just needs to be addressed, because if you do move them outside, then it changes the application,
Okay.
which then changes the notice, which changes
And those
all
steps,
kinds of good stuff.
You're right. The steps specifically we're talking about are the ones entering what would be considered the front door of the house.
Oh, that's considered the front door? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
And then the 4 that you see in the drawing are coming down from a deck.
Right. Yes. So it's entering the house.
Okay.
So it's the steps that are entering the house. Okay.
Related to that issue, I guess there would probably also be a concern, given that you are on the golf course essentially, with drainage issues. And I know that you've addressed the impervious surface percentages. Similarly to the concern that Mary Beth has voiced, have you done any kind of a site plan with regard to drainage and that type of thing?
Yes. Toberman is the civil engineer doing the site planning and the surveying for the house, and they're almost finished with their surveying. One thing that they're working on as part of the project is a new sewer line that needs to be installed down Wesley, Currently, the house was positioned on this lot before the current city code, and the sewer runs between my neighbor's house, my houses. And that's no longer acceptable. So Toberman, in addition to surveying the new drainage recommendation, is providing a survey and design for the sewer line. And within that, they're taking into consideration the drainage for the whole lot, the whole site, to accommodate it draining into a new sewer line on Wesley.
Then the other question I had was, you mentioned that you might want to do educational programming at the house. Any conflict there with, that would just be more on an informal level as opposed to, strictly speaking, public educational use?
I should clarify, I won't personally be conducting any educational programming, but my agreement that we have with Northwestern is that Northwestern would be able to use the house for educational programming. And
well, I think that it's, I did read through the entire packet, and I think that I would love for people to see a totally solar house placed in Evanston successfully. So I can understand that, but I know that sometimes there are concerns, zoning concerns in an R1 district to, have kind of public events. I think on an informal basis, though, I can't imagine that anyone would object.
it's a great question, yeah. I don't know the frequency of tours of the house, but from our estimations, we don't foresee it being all that frequent. Certainly not weekly or with that level of frequency.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sure.
Sir, I have a question. Did you say you were going to live there still?
Yes.
And you plan to work the tours and the educational thing around your life?
Yes.
Okay. And you're with your family, everybody's going to live there?
Just me.
Oh, just you? Okay.
Yep. It's an incentive to keep the house clean.
All right, any other questions? Sorry. Yeah, okay. Thank you. If you have a seat, we'll let anybody else who'd like to ask any questions, comments, those sorts of things, and then we'll bring you back up to make a final statement or answer with their concerns.
Great. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on this project? Neighbors? Anybody? Nobody wants to get up. All right. Okay, then. So now it's your chance. Do you want to say a final thing? You don't have to.
No.
You can sum if you'd like. You don't have to.
Just thank you very much for your time, and I hope things work out on my behalf.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I didn't sign in. But
Yep.
I'm a neighbor, and I would love to speak out in support if it helps in any way.
Yes, you absolutely can. Just go to the microphone, give us your name and your address, and say whatever you'd like to say.
Hi, I'm Sonia Nordahl. I live at 1507 Colfax, and I'm literally about 2-3 houses away, and I walk by that beautiful lot all the time and envy it dearly, and I think it's going to be fantastic for the neighborhood, and I have not heard anyone say anything except for, yay, we can't wait to see it. So I haven't heard one whisper of like what's happening except for, we can't wait to see it.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, with that, we will close the record. Comments?
I've been watching them build this for a couple of months. It's actually a very innovative use of the space. Now, that doesn't say anything about the zoning of it, but it's a beautiful house.
I think this is a great project. I think having a model home in Evanston that's based on sustainable energy is great not only for the neighborhood but also for the city. It's a good example also of the interaction between the university and residents of the city. And I appreciate the lengths that the applicant has gone to this point to make this the least deviation necessary from the zoning ordinance requirements, in terms of eliminating what otherwise would have been a very nice sunroom, in the interest of decreasing the lot coverage and impervious surface requests. In the case of lot coverage, there's no request. And the property is somewhat unique, and this, I think, is it's unique in the way it faces, and it's also unique in its size, in that it only has a certain amount of buildable space on the lot to begin with. So I'm completely in favor of the project. I think it's a great project and a great use of a pre-constructed, sustainable home.
I echo many of Scott's statements. This is the first time I've seen this lot. You know, I haven't come upon it, and I was instantly taken by its orientation to the park. And when I was there, Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse was there, deconstructing the current structure. So I appreciate sort of the environmental consideration of, reusing those materials, and appreciate the opportunity to showcase an interesting and innovative design of Northwestern, and I think it's a really exciting project. And I too echo what Scott said, that, I recognize that the applicant has made some significant changes to the original design of the house in order to limit the number and the amount of variations that are being requested this evening.
Anyone else?
I'm in favor of the project. It's a nice project, so I will support it. I think that, yes, it is. The lot is unique, actually. I went specifically to see it, and it is very interesting. It's a nice place, and this will be a good addition to the lot and to the location. So I'm in support of it.
Great. I happen to be in agreement. Generally, I am a stickler on the least deviation necessary, and you gave me an out by saying that you would just, plan B was to start over, right? You wouldn't actually use this house. So normally I would take you up on that and say, absolutely not. You have found another path that requires least deviation. However, I do think that the public benefit of this particular house outweighs that in this particular instance and in this location. I think the benefit of having as Scott said, a model house that is truly sustainable in our community, which values that sustainability, is a good thing. And I think there's definitely a public benefit to that. So with that, we will now go through the 7 standards of major variations.
Mary Beth, can I just add a point?
Absolutely.
Well, not pertinent to our zoning request, and I haven't approached the lot from the park. It would be interesting if Northwestern could include some sort of placard or something that tells the story of this house, so that, as people are appreciating it from the park, that there's some, that it extends the educational benefit, if you will, because I think it's really exciting, and I'd love to see more people actually understand what's happening there, as opposed to like, hey, that's a cool looking house, So I think that would be an interesting way of extending that benefit.
I think there was discussion at Dapper about that, and there was concern about the size of such a plaque, and that it not be a sign so much as something smaller on the house, which would mean people would necessarily have to trespass. Yeah.
Well, no, and I would actually propose that something be placed in the park so that more people could, so that there's more benefit.
It's not technically the park, though, right? It's a golf course.
All right. Yeah.
So we don't really have the rights to that. I do want.
The non-golfer.
Yeah, that's right. Since I do have somebody from Northwestern here who worked on the project, I would love it for next year's house if you'd work with zoning to try and get a module that fits on our lots so we don't have to keep redoing this. It's in our interest, it's in your interest to try and get it to fit on an Evanston lot so we don't have to keep redoing variances.
And I do want to mention that it is congratulations for winning this solar decathlon for the first time with this design.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, now we'll go back to standards for major variations. So number one, the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. It certainly will not. I think that it will increase the property values of adjoining properties, given that it's a very modern and award-winning design, and that is substantially more architecturally significant than the existing house on the site. So I do believe that that standard has been met. Number two, the requested variation is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. Okay, so the zoning ordinance wants you to be able to improve your property, and I'm going to go a little bit left here and say the comprehensive plan has an interest in these sorts of sustainable projects, and so it's certainly within the keeping of that comprehensive plan and thereby the zoning ordinance. So I do believe that that standard has been met. Number three, the alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to this property. So this is a unique lot in Evanston that doesn't actually have alley access. So the only access is through the front of the lot. It is also on an unpaved street, and it is adjacent to significant open lands. So all of those things make this for a unique location and unique to the lot. The other peculiarity here is related to the public benefit of using this house, this award-winning house that has that's already been built, is that it's been built, and so the modifications that have been made to it have been made as much as they can. So I do believe that that standard has been met. Number four, the property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. So in the worst case scenario, right, if we apply all of the zoning, the front yard, side yard, rear yard, lot coverages, this unique house could not be located on nearly any lot in Evanston. As I understand it from staff, many other lots were looked at, and it was very difficult to find a spot that had the correct orientation to the sun, as well as the least number of variances necessary to make it work. So I do believe that that standard has been met. Number five, the purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property, or there's a public benefit. And I'm going with public benefit on here, though I don't believe you're in it to flip it and make some cash. But I do believe the public benefit standard applies here because there is a benefit to having this sort of development happen in Evanston, in a community that clearly supports this kind of development. So I do believe that that standard has been met. Number six, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. This is my guess, close to 100-year-old house on a lot that was located on the lot before current zoning regulations were in place. So I do believe that that standard has been met. Number seven, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation among the feasible options identified before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Although the applicant admitted that there could be a way to do this without any variances, I do believe that this particular scope, this particular project does reduce the degree of nonconformity of the existing house on the lot. So what we get rid of, the good things that happen from a zoning perspective are we get rid of a detached garage in the front yard. We get a rear yard that's closer to a compliant location. We get two side yards that are in compliance as well. So I do believe that those outweigh the least deviation necessary. So I believe that that standard has been met.
I would just add, I don't think on this factor the applicant conceded that there was a lower change associated with this project. Rather, what the applicant conceded was that he could do a different project that would require less change.
I agree with that.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
I move in the matter ZBA 17ZMJV-0092 with respect to the property at 1402 Lincoln Street that the major variations requested be granted, subject to the condition that the property be developed in accordance with the testimony and documents submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? And with a vote of 7-1, your project has been approved. Good luck with your project. Sorry, 7-0. Sorry. Having a tough night. Okay, we're moving on to 1015 McDaniel, and Melissa will read that into the record.
David and Robin Shesso, property owners, appeal the zoning administrator's decision to partially deny minor zoning relief, case number 17ZMNV0076, to construct a two-car detached garage in the R2 single-family residential district. The appellant was granted minor zoning relief to construct a one-car detached garage with a maximum building footprint of 12 feet by 22 feet in compliance with all required setbacks and subject to the removal of the north concrete walk within the front and side yards for a maximum building lot coverage of 43.8% and impervious surface coverage of 56.8%. The appellant was denied minor zoning relief for a 20 by 22 foot garage with 49.7% building lot coverage where a maximum 40% is permitted, zoning code section 6836, 65.5% impervious surface coverage where a maximum 55% is permitted, zoning code section 6839, 48.9% of the rear yard occupied by an accessory structure where a maximum 40% is permitted, zoning code section 6463, a 2-foot south interior side yard setback where 3 feet is required, zoning code section 6837, and a 1-foot south interior side yard setback for an eave, yard obstruction, where an eave may extend 10% or 6 inches into a setback, zoning code section 6419. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include appeal application submitted October 6th, 2017, minor variation application submitted August 25th, 2017, staff findings of facts of minor variation denial, zoning analysis, plat of survey, site plan, elevations, modified site plan submitted November 2nd, 2017, minor variation public notice, minor variation final determination notice, aerial view of property, image of property, and zoning map of property.
Okay. All right. So if you guys would like to come up and tell us a little bit about your project, please. Sure. Did you raise your hand and get sworn in? Fantastic.
I am Scott Shesso at 1015 McDaniel Avenue. This is my wife, Robin.
If you can just be sure to speak into the microphone. Got lots of avid watchers who love this stuff.
I bet. So as Melissa said, we initially proposed, or our builder proposed, a 20 by 22 foot garage to allow us to park 2 cars inside. The main hardship is our property is very narrow and small. It was built in, I think the house was built in 1960. It's actually when my grandparents bought the house. We have more than 2 cars, so street parking can be an issue, one of which can't be parked on the street, so it needs to be parked indoors. Most of the lots in our neighborhood are quite a bit larger, and 12 out of 17 in the block have 2-car garages already, so we're hoping to just be able to build something that most of our neighbors already have. For all the reasons people need garages, protection from the weather, storage, security. When there's street cleaning or snow removal, when we've got cars in the street, if we need to be out of town, it becomes an issue. So for all those reasons, we're hoping to, Melissa said we suggested a smaller 20 by 20, which I think is about as small as we can get and still successfully store 2 cars. So we're trying to get as close as we can. Limit the variations, but I think that's about as small as a 2-car garage can be. We did also suggest that we can remove some of the walkway that goes from the back of the house to the alley, since we wouldn't need an area to shovel to get to the alley and the garbage cans if we had a garage. So that will help reduce the impermeable surface. And I think that's pretty much all I can think of.
So I have a question or a clarification. So are we now considering the revised 20 feet by 20 foot garage as opposed to what was in the on the agenda and what was in the packet?
You can consider whichever site plan you want, but keep in mind the standard about least deviation necessary, and that the applicant has stated that the smaller garage would be feasible in their situation.
So my question is, did you say you were going to remove the entire walkway? Are you talking about all the way to the front, that north side walkway?
So we actually have a side door, which is our primary access to the backyard, so we wouldn't be able to remove the whole thing, but certainly the section in the backyard.
So the section from the side door to where the garage would be?
No, the section from the back of the house to the alley.
The back of the house to the alley, okay.
You have noted that the homes on your block that have the two-car garages generally have larger lots. So I think that one of the problems I'm having with this is that the zoning administrator has given you the option that still requires some deviation from zoning, but not quite as egregiously as you are hoping to get with a two-car garage. So it sounds as though you maybe inherited this from your grandmother?
We purchased it.
You purchased it from your grandmother?
From her estate, yes.
The family owned it, and we were living in it for a while, and we decided to move in. I always knew he wanted a garage. If he had his way, we'd be somewhere else where he could have, like a three-car garage. And so one of the kind of concessions I wanted to be in Evanston. I like being in the city. I like Evanston. Was, this is the first improvement we're actually making to the house. So.
Right.
And also, what he didn't mention is I'm disabled, and so we do have two cars, and it is a problem, especially in the winter, where I'm basically, my body sleeps until the afternoon, so a lot of times, my car will get plowed in unless he takes care of both cars. Shovels, one of our neighbors is elderly, so he'll help with theirs, so it's, in the winter, it's a hardship, and it's kind of annoying to have my car in the public way if it's not where it should be.
But if you had a one-car garage, you could put your car in the one-car garage and alleviate that problem, correct?
Well, since we also have another car that can't be parked on the street, we need two garage spots to park her car and that car as well.
Why can't the other car be parked on the street?
It does not have an engine at the moment. So.
And do you plan to help me understand what's happening with the car that doesn't have an engine? Are you actively working on that car, and so ultimately it will be actively used and therefore can be parked on the street? Do you plan on selling and disposing of it? What's happening with that car?
It is a long-term project that's been, worked on a little bit here and there over the years. So
you're sort of a hobbyist with your cars?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
So once it's finished, I'd really still rather park it in a garage, since it's a project car. It would be I'd like to protect it from the elements. So we, even when it's complete, we'd still like two spots, so her car can go in the garage and that car can go in the garage.
We do also have a bit of a crime concern. One of our neighbors' cars was stolen a couple years ago. They got it back, so we're all on the block kind of keeping our eye out and a little nervous, so that would give us peace of mind as well.
All right, are there any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody here to speak about this project?
No, but we actually do have a letter that
Oh,
a
right.
few of our neighbors signed in support.
If you give it to me, we'll enter it into the record as a appellant's Exhibit 1. Do you have more than one copy or just the one?
I did make a few copies, I think.
Great.
And
Thank
of the two houses adjacent that don't have garages, they don't have plans of, I think they were worried about setting a precedent when this was previously discussed, and one definitely has no plans to make a garage, and the other, it would be something that fit in code, just slightly larger than a shed to fit motorcycles, so.
This document you handed me appears to be a petition of sorts, and so I just want to confirm that you got these signatures from all these people?
I did.
Okay.
Well, she got a couple and I got a couple.
You, the generic you. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Does anybody need to hear from the zoning administrator? Do you have questions for him? Anybody? Anybody? Okay. All right. So what we're going to start with is we're going to start with affirming or denying the decision of the zoning administrator. And then based on that, we'll see where we go with this. So tell me, sorry, I'm going to close the record. Tell me what your thoughts are.
I think that the applicant said it well himself, that the lots that have two-car garages are by and large much larger lots. And while I have sympathy for the fact that you don't believe that your neighbors who don't have garages at this time don't plan on putting them in, the person that they sell it to in 2 years or 3 years will say, this was an undersized lot that got a major variation for a two-car garage. And so it's the snowballing effect, and that's why there is the zoning regulation, so that there is a certain standard in terms of impervious surface. I would hope that maybe you can, I would think that a one-car garage would be much less to construct than a two-car garage. And that maybe that opens the possibility for you to rent a garage nearby in the neighborhood for the project car and still just have one on the street. But I don't see how we override the zoning administrator's finding because it's consistent with the zoning. They're trying to make allowances for the one-car garage, but it's really pushing the envelope to go the further distance. So I would back the zoning administrator's finding in this.
I thought that was particularly well summarized, and I agree.
I also agree.
I agree as well. I'd just like to emphasize the open space as well. So with a two-car garage, it's only 10 feet. I mean, it's just over 10 feet, which is the minimum allowable between the house and an accessory structure. And a 10-foot backyard as open space doesn't really fit with the neighborhood and the way that Evanston's housing stock is. So I agree to affirm the zoning administrator as well.
Well, I went over there, and it is so small back there that I really can't even imagine that you could safely fit a two-car garage. I'm sure you could figure it out with design, and I know that almost everybody on your blog does have a garage, and there was nothing and a very small patch of grass when I went over there to look at it. But I also feel like that the zoning administrator's decision was the best choice.
You guys at the end, where are you landing?
Well, I went to see the lot too, and you're right. By the way, the neighboring lots, they're not too large, I would say, but they are larger than this one. And it's true that on the perpendicular street and alley there are two-car garages. They still seem a little bit overloading the place, but they have larger lot, although once again not so much larger. So in your case, I would stay with the zoning administrator. I believe that his decision is right. It is, you will be really overloading your lot and I would say the neighborhood with a two-car garage. It's really too much, and the space between the garage and the building becomes really small. It's 10 feet, I believe, by memory. It's really nothing. Unfortunately, your building is a kind of a larger than the rest of the buildings, and it is on a smaller lot. And this brings all these parameters that actually cannot be kept, and we cannot. I don't think that we will make a good decision if we allow this large garage on this small lot. So I believe the zoning administrator was right by proposing keeping the minor variance with a single car garage. That's my opinion.
And I disagree. And the reason why, it's a 25-foot lot. It is a small lot, but it is a typical lot in Evanston. 25-foot is very typical. In my neighborhood, at least, it is. The unfortunate thing is that their setback is much larger than most of the, at least on my block. On where they sit, so they do have a bigger backyard. My only question is, I guess, to the zoning administrator is, what is required per house, or what's the minimum requirement for parking that is asked for? Not on the lot size, but based on per house.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Scott Manningham, Planning and Zoning Administrator. The zoning ordinance requires 2 parking spaces, or would require 2 parking spaces of a newly constructed single-family residence.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, do I have a motion?
Just as a matter of procedure.
Yeah.
Based on the comments, it seems like the motion would be to deny the relief requested, but should we be also, in considering the factors, making a motion to affirm the zoning administrator's granting of variations that would allow the single-family garage?
The single car.
The single-car garage, yeah.
And the answer, I think, is yes.
So does that require 2 motions and 2 considerations of the same standards?
The first thing you need to do is a motion on the appeal itself. After that, if anyone chooses to make any other motion for the alternate plan, you are welcome to, but don't have to.
So by denying the appeal, we are allowing them to still build the 1-car garage, which is what the zoning administrator approved. Is that correct? Because I think that's the consensus here. So you can build a 1-car garage, not a 2-car.
Correct. It might be clearer to make a motion to either uphold the zoning administrator's decision or modify.
I like that. And you still want me to go through the standards? All right.
I'm sorry, so we're going to have 2 motions here. One is just one motion.
I think we're going to do one.
Okay, to uphold but then we don't have to have a second motion granting the variations for the 1-car garage?
It's a minor variation. It's prerogative of the zoning administrator.
He's already agreed to them. All right. So with that, is everybody good? Yeah, all right. So there are 5 standards for a minor variance, and the first is that the practical difficulty is not self-created. This is an existing house that was built according to the owners in the 1960s, and the house has obviously been there. The zoning was long before current zoning rules, so that standard has been met. The requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. I do believe it will have a substantial impact given the huge mass relative to the size of the lot and the size of the house, of the existing house on the lot. That's so much bulk on the property, given the size of the property and the loss of open space and green space. I think that's a detriment. So I don't believe that that standard has been met.
I would just add, I think in an ironic way, I think it would also have a negative impact on the value of this property.
I would agree with that. Does everyone else agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Myrna, I'm looking at you because you got to disagree with me on one of these. The requested variation is in keeping with the comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance. The proposed variation isn't in keeping with the zoning ordinance since it would increase the bulk of the property beyond what is typical for that neighborhood. It would also create overcrowding of structures by having them be so close and so large on the lot. So I do not believe that that standard has been met. Number 4, the requested variation is consistent with the preservation policies set forth in the comprehensive general plan. The proposed variation is for a house outside of the historic district, and it's not a landmark property, so that standard has been met. And number 5, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation among the feasible options identified before the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator has, in fact, identified a better option, which is to do a 1-car garage, which then allows for parking on the lot as well as keeping green space and open space and keeping the bulk down. So I do not believe that that standard has been met. Okay. Is there a motion?
I would just point out on the last standard also that the zoning administrator's alternative still requires variations from the zoning ordinance, but to a much lesser degree than the 2-car garage proposal, and thus reflects a compromise on the city's behalf as well.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll make a motion in the matter ZBA 17 ZMJV-0091 that the applicant's appeal of the zoning administrator's decision be denied. In other words, sorry, let me rephrase that in a positive way, that the zoning administrator's decision be upheld.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
So with a vote of 6-1, the zoning administrator's decision has been upheld, so that you can build the 1-car garage per his determination. Okay. I think that is everything on the agenda. Melissa, you got anything else interesting to talk about?
Since everything wrapped up tonight, our next meeting that is scheduled in November is canceled due to a lack of items.
Excellent.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
I vote nay.
All right. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.